Okay, this is video 4 now. So again, I was talking a little bit about communism and strong central governments there on that last one. And if you read if you read the Communist Manifesto, you'll be able to see that all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are pretty much already in place in the United States. Now, I'm not telling you this to try and be a McCarthyist. A McCarthyist. Communism is just a strong central government. That's it. Communism, fascism, statism, all these where the governments, where the people in power have all that much control, just quite simply they just don't work. Or rather, it does work, but it works for the benefit of the very few at the very top. People do have these weaknesses, and again, it's hard for me not to hate them, but it's not so much about focusing on my hatred. It's more trying to find something constructive to do about it. Communism doesn't work because there's no checks and balances. There's no separation of powers. And here's the news: we have no checks and balances and no separation of powers. Now, one of the problems is that all of the judicial branch of government are of course attorneys. Now, we didn't always used to have it this way, by the way. If you Google public prosecutors or lay judges, not all of the judicial branch used to be made up of attorneys. Now it's all attorneys. We used to have public prosecutors in places and lay judges. Those were people that were not attorneys that were prosecutors and judges. Now in certain areas, I think here where I'm in Vegas, you can't even get the job unless you're an attorney. I don't know I think that's a law that should be challenged. It should be challenged definitely, and you can challenge these laws in court and stuff. A very big majority of the Senate and the House are attorneys, like over 60%. A lot of our presidents have been attorneys. Again, the Clintons are both attorneys. Obama's an attorney. Now remember, all these attorneys, well, they're all subject to the bar. And so you have all these judicial officers. You have all these people that work in one branch and make money by arguing in laws and stuff. They make money by arguing laws, working in all three branches. In fact, in the executive branch, you have the Attorney General, which I think might have been our first mistake. That was way back in 1979, was when we established the office of the Attorney General, and that office now has a tremendous amount of power. That's an attorney that decides who the United States prosecutes. That office does. There's a lot of room for corruption there. They can be very selective. They can selectively prosecute. I'm not so sure that was a good idea, even though it's an old idea. Now remember, here's the major scam. Remember, attorneys make money by prosecuting and defending laws. Now what they do is they have a lot of money, so they're able to paint a real brainwashing story on TV about attorneys. There's all kinds of cop shows on TVs. There's all kinds of attorney shows on TV. There's all kinds of doctor shows on TV. If you turn on the TV, you're going to see one of those three or some stupid sitcom that's not really funny. That's what you're going to get when you turn on TV or when you're watching your basic channels. Well, they can afford to put this stuff on, and you watch these shows and they're brainwashing you into thinking that these attorneys are like good people. Now remember, they're able to afford to put these shows on TV. Well, please, turn that crap off for a second, and look what's going on in the real world here. What they're doing is that they put on some really convincing arguments. They'll put on this story about this lady that was harmed, so somebody was harmed, and then they find a case when a lot of America has been sold on the idea that we need to pass a law for everything, when there's better solutions than passing a new law for everything. Okay, this is a big thing that this discussion is going to be about, is that there's a better solution than passing a law for everything. Remember, attorneys, they want to pass all these damn laws. Well, we have all these damn laws. There's better solutions than passing a law for everything. Much better solutions. They find a case so they put this show on TV, and they find a case where somebody gets hurt, and then they say that there should be a law against that, and they proceed to sell you on the idea to pay this to prevent them from ever happening again. So what happens is things like domestic violence, just for an example, like domestic violence. Now, hear me out here. Don't think what I'm going to say before I'm going to say it. When you assault somebody, okay, that is felony assault. and it should carry, in my world, a felony assault should carry 30, 40 years, 30, 40 years felony assault should carry if you assault somebody like that. That will actually get people to quit assaulting somebody if they're really looking at 20 to 30 years. Now, we can't afford to house somebody for 20 to 30 years, supposedly, because we have our jail or prisons filled with all these pot smokers. Now, we're going to let all the pot smokers go. We're going to put the real criminals in jail, first of all. But so felony assault carries 20 to 30 years. But what they do is they make this new law where you have felony assault, which is what domestic violence really is. And they create this new law, domestic violence, which is now it's like watered down. So now the real cases of domestic violence, the real where it's really happened, they don't get prosecuted enough because now it's domestic violence. And in the cases that now they can put all these different people in jail. All these people that, got into an argument with their girlfriend are now getting too much of a crime. So the real criminals are getting less, and the non-criminals are getting more, and they can charges for all these, and then they put their bailiff in charge of their little anger management classes and make you pay for that, and make you pay for all, so you can go listen to the thought of the day and all that crap, and they charge you for all this, and they've got all these people that are basically not criminals that got into an argument with their girlfriend, going and having to listen and pay all this money. It's a money-making scheme, is what it is. Okay, and the real guy that's actually beating the crap out of his wife and threatening to kill her and all this, that guy is getting, a much lesser crime. Well, instead of creating this new law, we should just have it be felony assault, and for all this stuff, and it's 20 to 30 years, and actually take the time to prosecute and convict the real criminals, the people that are actually committing these crimes. And when a crime is committed, these crimes should go all the way to trial in almost every single case. We should go to trial in every single one of these to prove that the person wasn't. Now that cuts into their money making scheme, because there's just really not enough cases of this. But I tell you what, if there's going to be a hell of a lot less cases, maybe not at the beginning, but after about 1,000 or 2,000 people are serving 20 or 30 years for felony assault, people are going to wake up to the fact that you can't just get away with that anymore. People, it's not a revolving door thing like it is now, where a lot of people are just in and out of prison, in and out of prison, in and out of prison. So that's what they want. They want a revolving door thing because they get paid by the head. They charge you by the head. The more people that they're in jail that they have to house and feed and clothe and all that stuff, remember, they're paying you to house all these people. So they proceed to sell you on the idea that they're going to prevent this from ever happening again. And they sales pitch you on prevention. But then in a lot of cases, the problems just get worse, because when they're trying to prosecute moral crimes like vice crimes, then it becomes more profitable to become moral too. There's that other edge when you're talking about all these drug charges. There's some guy gets drunk or gets high and commits a crime. And then they're going to, he was high and he committed a crime, so we're going to make getting high a crime now, and we're going to put them all in jail. And so what that does is it makes it more profitable to be immoral. Once you make something illegal, it raises the value of the vice. So the drugs actually, prior to 1963, when they passed the Controlled Substance Act, drug prices were very, very low, and there really wasn't that big of a drug problem. After 1963, well, they still had drugs illegal in some areas, but it became federal in that time. And the price of drugs just is increased, and the crime has just gotten rampant because now you have all these powerful gangs because drugs are illegal. They're more profitable. The same thing happened with Prohibition too, when that created Al Capone. It creates organized crime when you do that. So after the law is passed, the person that we pass the law is actually in most cases still being heard. We're just paying the government now to do something about it. Now, if you don't support the law, like if I were to say this about domestic violence and you weren't here to hear me, and you didn't hear me out about what my ideas on domestic violence was, you would just assume that I'm some kind of asshole right-wing guy that just beats his wife and doesn't want to get caught or something, and I'm labeled as somebody who doesn't care about domestic violence, and that's how they label you. If you oppose these laws, the passing of these laws, and all of a sudden, okay, well, you're obviously, you're labeled as somebody who doesn't care about that argument, and they'll label you. And now, in order for a law to really to be just, there has to be a victim and an injury. There has to be a victim and an injury, and then it's a just law. But they have all these watered down, they have laws within laws now, and they keep passing more laws to justify their existence. And we have enough laws. A good friend of mine once remarked that the attorneys that get involved with the legislative process, and this is a good friend of mine, once remarked that attorneys in the American Bar Association, he called them a satanic brotherhood. That's what he called them. And his argument went like this. The attorneys that have decided to become part of the legislative process, they sit in their cushy government jobs and they dream up all these unconstitutional laws that you and I are supposed to follow. And the rest of the attorneys neither litigate for anybody's constitutional rights nor raise the validity of these constitutional laws because they're getting rich off charging the little guy to fight them in court. And for fear of being disbarred, they won't do it either, too. Now, the cops love to get to tell everybody how to live their lives. The cops get the chance to be thugs, and they spend all their time being thugs for the attorneys, out chasing Johns around and pot smokers around than actually solving real crimes like murder and stuff like that. That's what they're all running around trying to make, just being thugs rather than actually going after real crimes. Now, the criminal justice system unanimously they all get together, well, let's come up with some more laws so we can justify hiring more cops and building more prisons and so on and so forth. Then they can charge us not only the taxes to enforce the laws by hiring more cops, jails, prisoner housing, and all, but also all the fines and the attorney fees. They also make money off all the fines and the attorney fees that the little guy like me and you face for smoking pot to deal with all this shit. So while these egos, they don't really understand. Well, they're getting rich, so they just don't care. They're selfish. They just want to make their money, and that's all there is to it. And it doesn't, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that, but you have to ruin people's entire lives. You're talking about putting people in prison, putting people to death. Greed kind of goes, a little bit overboard. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious and wanting to make a nice life for yourself. But when you're destroying people's entire frickin' lives, you're crossing a line there. You're crossing a big time moral line. And so what's happened to America really is you have the little guy like you and me, we end up having to fight, in these wars, and all these wars that they keep sending us off to go fight, all they're doing is that's just to increase the government contractor and the Texas oil man's profit. And in our minds, and especially the young, I'm too old probably now to be drafted, but in the young kid's mind, he's got to have it in the back of his head somewhere that he's got to know that he's not fighting for freedom anymore. He's got to know, maybe not on a conscious level, but either in his conscious or unconscious mind, he's got to know that he's not really fighting for freedom, and he's fighting for the government contractors so they can make a buck. He's fighting for the money, and his spirit's low. His morale is he's got to be borderline insane because all he's really fighting for is a legislative mess back home and the $25 an hour combat pay or whatever it is now. This country really, we don't really win wars anymore. How long have we been in Afghanistan? We just completely annihilated. We just blew the living shit out of Iraq to find a few guys and stuff. And, didn't really win that war. All we really have done is created a whole lot of the next generation of Iraqis are going to hate us even that much more. There's a difference between respect and fear. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that fear is the same thing as respect. But when people respect you, it's a completely different thing. People don't respect America, but they do fear America, and that fear eventually, that's why we're going to get suicide bombers and stuff like that, and that's just going to happen if we continue to have this kind of an attitude. My mother would say that, why don't you, Steve, why don't you become an attorney and do something? And the trouble is I dare to begin to raise the issue of a constitutionality of a law, or at least previously, prior to right now, today, things are really starting to begin to turn around, but I would probably disbarred, excommunicated, or some other kind of form of retaliation would keep a lot of attorneys in line, especially one that would owe student loans like I would. Judge Napolitano is very brave to be able to come out and say the things that he does, and he's only one voice, and he's like the only one that I've really heard that have had the balls to come out and say the things that he does. And there's a lot of money in this scam. It's very likely that, you know, if I wasn't careful, I could be set up and all kinds of other stuff. So that's let's see what time, how much time I've gotten in on this. Okay, I'm sitting at about 15 minutes, so I'll go ahead and make this video 4 and get these 2 uploaded, and we'll get to the next sections. Again, I'm going to be talking about some more advanced stuff. I think probably the stuff that I'm talking about here right now, a lot of you guys know. I think that one more other thing I want to say on this video is, I know that you guys are probably aware of this, but you know, you guys get sidetracked, and you know, you run over and start talking about globalists and run over here. You know, we need to start focusing in on narrowing it down to what we can actually do here, and just narrow it down to, you know, being able to control the vote. We got to get control of the voting boosts and things like that. We've got to, you know, put people in positions to be able to force these changes. And I'm going to get into that a little bit. And I can see that the groups are beginning to go that way, and which is good. And I'll go ahead and pause the video.